everyone, welcome everyone to the daily news analysis of 22nd of September 2023। आज की इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल जितने सारे हैं, वुमेन कोटा बिल क्लियर्ड इन राज्यसभा एज ऑल मेंबर्स वोट इन सपोर्ट। Visa services paused amid Canada tussle. Then Supreme Court refuses to intervene in order directing Karnataka to release Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu. India's suspension of visa services in Canada creates panic in Punjab. Then silent killer propelling India's development in the right way. Then gold hunt tracking India's growth trajectory. China, US and India absent at the United Nations Climate Ambition Summit. Then ISRO hoping to wake up Vikram and Pragya Today. Saroja Vaidyanathan Bharatanatyam dancer passes away. Then purchases of homes, vehicles have dented saving, not distress. Large firm get debt insurance. Iswan's flexibility. Rai outlines broadcast policy. Women's quota bill cleared in Rajya Sabha as all members vote in support. The Rajya Sabha passed women's reservation bill unanimously on Thursday, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi saying that the unanimity will instill confidence among the public. The Constitution 128th Amendment Bill, or the Nari Shakti Bandhan Abhiyan, and its 6 clauses were passed with all 14 members present in the upper house voting in favor of them. A historic achievement, said Rajya Sabha Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar. After passage of bill, the members, the opposition members against the provision that the law will come into force only after a census and a delimitation exercise were defeated in a voice vote, and as none of the members demanded a division on the amendments, the Lok Sabha had passed the bill on Wednesday. A total of 72 speakers participated in the debate that was marked with poetry and couplets. The debate was moderated by a series of women who took turns to be in the chair. The key issues raised by the opposition included the delay in bringing the bill and the lack of separate reservation for the other backward classes. Women within 33% reservation, the Treasury benches countered these arguments with measures taken by Modi regime to support women after passing the bill. The House adjourned since died, countering the ruling party speakers who heaped the credit solely on Prime Minister Modi for bringing the legislation. The opposition members slammed the BJP for showcasing the bill as an act of the Prime Minister's benevolence towards women. They also criticized the title of the bill, Nari Shakti Bandhan Abhiyan. You have named the bill as if it is a divine blessing. It is no divine blessing. It is our constitutional right. Congress MP Ranjit Ranjan, who opened the debate for the opposition, said, "Why did it take the government 9.5 years to bring this legislation, and why is the government pushing its implementation to 2029?" Asked the opposition speaker. Leaders of the opposition, Mallikarjun Kharge, said, "When the center is capable of taking instant decisions such as demonetization, 9.5 years delay is passing a bill supported by every party was unacceptable." TMC MP Dolla Sen, in her multilingual speech, where she switched between Hindi, English, and Bangla, completed the Congress government in Karnataka and Aam Aadmi Party government in Punjab and Delhi for pro-women schemes. The next day, visa services paused amid Canada tussle. Criminal functioning of Indian missions in Canada has been affected because of the security threats faced by Indian diplomats, and they are therefore temporarily unable to issue visas. The Ministry of External Affairs announced here on Thursday. MEA spokesperson Arindam Bagchi also said India would prefer party in posting of diplomats in each other's mission, saying the number of Canadian diplomats in India is expected to be reduced. He further said New Delhi had not received any evidence from the Trudeau government regarding alleged Indian hand in the killing of Khalistan target force chief Hardeep Singh Nijjar in Surrey on June 18. He urged Canada to uphold the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations by ensuring safety of Indian diplomats. You are aware of the security threats being faced by our High Commission and consulates in Canada. These have disrupted their normal functioning. Accordingly, our High Commission and consulates are temporarily unable to process visa applications. We will be reviewing the situation on a regular basis, said Mr. Bagchi, announcing the suspension of the Indian visas in Canada. The suspension of a visa facility in Indian mission in Canada will also be enforced on third some country applicants who may choose to apply for visa through Indian missions in Canada since last Monday when Prime Minister Trudeau accused Indian operatives of carrying out the murder of a user in Survey, British Columbia threat prosecution reception has highlighted for Indian diplomats in Canada and the Ottawa's diplomat in India. On both sides, vitriolic online comments targeted serving diplomats. However, on the Canadian side, Sikh for Justice has carried out an online campaign calling for Hindu Hindus go to India and took out targeted poster campaigns against Indian diplomats stationed in Canada. Mr. Bhakti took note of the threats against the Indian diplomats and reminded Ottawa to ensure security for Indian officials under the Vienna Convention. Mr. Bagchi called for political will to deal with terrorism and said the larger issue is of terrorism supported and funded by our western neighbor Pakistan, but the issue of safe havens and places to operate has been provided abroad, including by Canada. Earlier, the High Commission of Canada informed the Hindu that in view of a prevailing tension, Canada too had adjusted its staff count in the diplomatic mission in India, saying, in light of the current environment where the tensions have highlighted, we are taking action to ensure the safety of our diplomats out of the abundance of caution. We have decided to temporarily adjust staff presence in India. The Canadian mission also reminded India to uphold the diplomatic code of conduct as enshrined in Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations 1961. The Canadian side did not confirm its if the staff reduction was because of the convention with India, but Mr. Bagchi during his briefing indicated that a convention on reduction of the diplomats in Canadian mission in India is ongoing. We have informed the Canadian government that there should be parity in the strength and rank equivalence in our mutual diplomatic presence. Their numbers here are very much higher than ours in Canada. The details are being worked out, but I assume there will be a reduction from the Canadian side, Mr. Bagchi said. And third जो है Supreme Court refuses to intervene in order directing Karnataka to release Kaveri water to Tamil Nadu. The Supreme Court on Thursday refused to intervene either in favor of Karnataka or Tamil Nadu in the Kaveri water dispute. Instead, it banked on the combined expertise of a Kaveri Water Regulation Committee and Kaveri Water Management Authority to manage the water sharing between the two neighboring states. The CWRC had earlier directed Karnataka to release 5,000 cubic a day to Tamil Nadu. A three-judge bench headed by Justice B.R. Gavai said the CWMA and the CWRC, both represented by additional Solicitor General Aishwarya Bhati, were regularly meeting every 15 days to review the water flow with due regard to the distress felt by both the states. The bench also comprising Justice P.S. Narasimha and P.K. Mishra expressed satisfaction that CWRC and CWMA has considered all the factors, especially the drought situation, before fixing the water release by Karnataka at the rate of 5,000 cubic a day to Tamil Nadu. Senior advocate Mukul Rohtagi and G. Umapati For Tamil Nadu said the CWRC had initially decided that the state required 7,200 cubic of water from Karnataka but had abruptly in its final order reduced the quantum to 5,000 cubic. The CWMA had in turn confirmed the CWRC order that Karnataka has ensured Kaveri water releases from the Krishnaraja Sagar and Kabini reservoir put together so that the flows were realized at Biligundulu at the rate of 5,000 cubic. Mr. Rohtagi argued that the CWMA had mechanically accepted the CWRC decision. The state said the release of water is their necessity to meet the pressing demands of the standing crops. On the other hand, senior advocate Syam Devan for Karnataka said the daily flow of 5,000 cubic of water was against the interest of the state. The state, especially in urban areas like Bengaluru, was on the brink of drinking water crisis where Tamil Nadu was in need of water for only irrigation. Mr. Divan said the distress in Karnataka had increased in the past 15 days. The authorities should not have ordered Karnataka to give more than 3,000 cubic per day, Mr. Divan submitted. Then next, India suspension. India's suspension of visa services in Canada creates panic in Punjab. With diplomatic tension between the two countries continuing to escalate, the people from the state awaiting visas, especially students who aspire to go for higher education there, are a worried lot. With India suspending visa services in Canada on Thursday, anxiety has gripped the residents of Punjab, especially students who aspire to pursue higher education in the North American country. Sab- Sarabpriya Arti, a Sangur-based immigration consultant, told the Hindu that students, their families, and other travelers to Canada are visible. As over a dozen of patients visited me, they are worried visas of their words will be rejected. As of now, there's nothing much to worry. But if Canada retaliates and issues restriction on visas, there would be a huge impact. Of Mr. Arti said, India has issued an advisory to its national in Canada to be cautious while traveling in the country. The bigger concern for parents whose children are in Canada is their safety and return to the homeland. Reports of gang violence in Canada has parents worried. She said, sense of uncertainty. Dr. Chand of Mianwal Aryan village in Jalandhar, whose daughter is in Canada's Bampton city for 3 years course in computer science, said, I am worried as I don't know how things will unfold in the days to come. BLS Visa Application Center, the private agency for processing Indian visas for Canadian travelers, started on its website that for operational reasons with effect from September 21, Indian visa services have been suspended till further notice. State Congress Chief Amarinder Singh Raja Waring said the move will affect Punjabis who have taken Canadian citizenship. A large number of them visit families here in the festive season here, she said. Silent killer. India must get more people to keep blood pressure under control. Globally, hypertension affects 1 in 3 individuals and 4 out of 5 do not have it adequately controlled. According to the first World Health Organization report on hypertension released on September 19, it is a grim reminder that countries have done little to keep the biggest risk factor for death and disability under check despite the easily availability of expensive medicines. Uncontrolled blood pressure over 140 by 90 is a main risk factor for cardiovascular disease such as heart attacks and stroke and the most common cause of disease and death. It is important to note that health risk is associated with hypertension do not begin at over 140 by 90. Instead, they operate in a continuum basis even below what is classified as clinical hypertension, especially in people who are diabetic or obese and those who consume tobacco and alcohol hence report on hypertension level in the population underestimate the cumulative risk of high blood pressure in the WHO report that released on 2019 data 180 million Indian adults aged 30 to 79 years have hypertension. Of them, the condition has been diagnosed only in 37%, 30% and treated, and near 15% of the people have hypertension under control. Women appear to be marginally better than men in having the condition diagnosed, treated, and controlled based on sketchy data from parts of India's book. Incidence was found to be 108 172 per 1 lakh people per year, and the 1 month case fatality rate was 18 to 42% as per the February 2022 study in the Global Burden of Disease report. In 2019, heart attacks was the leading cause of death and disability in India. Studies have shown that excess salt consumption over 5 grams a day is responsible for 17 to 30% of hypertension, while member states are required to achieve 30% relative reduction in mean population intake of salt by 2025. India is yet to implement many components of WHO's prescription to cut salt intake. A study in 4 Indian states published in 2021 found high salt and sugar content in packaged food items, making front of pack nutrition labeling mandatory, encouraging reformulation of food to cut down salt, and raising awareness in people to reduce salt intake should be urgently undertaken. India has, however, done well in improving blood pressure control in people with hypertension through the Novel Indian Hypertension Control Initiatives launched in 2018. The IHCI has successfully enrolled 5.8 million hypertension patients for treatment in 27 states as of June 2023. Importantly, 48% of patients enrolled at primary health center and 55 at the health wellness centers achieved blood pressure control as of March 2021. It is now important to greatly increase the number of hypertensive people on treatment and keep blood pressure under control. Propelling India's development the right way. Aim for moon. Aim for the moon is a byword for any venture marked by extreme ambition bordering on foolhardy. When India started space research in 1960s, many thought it was being reckless, a struggling young nation sinking some of its limited resources in a highly uncertain enterprise. Today, however, even the last of the naysayer must be convinced. In the matter of a few days, India became the first nation to land a rover on the south pole of the moon, followed up with a mission to study the sun. Yet this is also the moment to revisit a nagging concern: how do such stellar achievements stand and alongside the persistence of poverty, destitution, for millions of Indians? Even before the government set up the Indian Space Research Organization in 1969, the country was having a significant research program in space science. It was then coordinated by the Department of Atomic Energy, which itself had been founded in the early 1950s. These were certainly not isolated initiatives. Between 1951 and 1961, India established 5 Indian Institute of Technology, which is not time grew into globally respected academic centers. The first 2 Indian Institute of Management were inaugurated in 1961 during the 2 decades of 1950s and 60s. A number of public sector units A number of public sector units were established in diverse areas of industrial production that included steel, fertilizer, machine tools, electric machinery, drug production, and petrochemicals technology to remedy underdevelopment. Taken together, these public investments show that India was determined to become a serious player in advanced technologies of the time, despite the multifold challenge facing the young nation. New technologies, it was believed would quicken the pace of development of the country, which had suffered from the 2 centuries of colonialism. Vikram Sarabhai, the leader of Indian space program, had envisioned this was in the early 1960s that satellite could be used for building a nationwide telephone system and for providing agricultural and health education. In fact, the momentous step India had taken in the decades immediately after independence may be characterized as a moonshot approach to development, deploying modern industrialization to shape off the ills of the past. However, India's moonshot development strategy was only partially successful. It has also been the subject of much criticism from the certain quarters over the years. One was for its heavy reliance on public investment to the investments were being misdirected. According to some economists, being a labor or surplus country, they argue India should have stuck to its competitive advantage in labor-intensive industries such as garment and footwear rather than strengthening the country's scarce having in the capital and technology-intensive industries. But the time needed for new technology to come to fruition is too long, and the initial efforts required to strip that it is unlikely to expect a private player to lead the move to acquire it. There have been many misses for India's space mission, especially in the initial decades. A key factor behind the program's eventual success has been public funding, which did not waver for lack of short-term commercial viability. It is not only that the benefits from a technology are long in coming, but they are also difficult to be kept exclusive for private profiting. Consider, for instance, the internet. It is precisely because of the public good nature of technology that public sector support becomes crucial for developing them. Needless to say, the internet emerged from a research program funded by the United States government with the military objective in late 1950s in India. The technological capabilities built through state support provided with the base for the flourishing of private enterprise in many sectors, including pharmaceuticals, information technology, and the space sector. To more of it, likely in the year ahead, professionals who were earlier trained in India's public universities have found a leadership positions globally, which has deepened India's strategic importance in inequality is a hurdle for progress. The lackluster record for India's development strategy then was not account of the government doing too much in the area of technology building, but on the contrary, it was because the state or the government could not intervene effectively to reduce inequalities or ensure social development. Independent India did not implement a successful program on land redistribution. Ownership of assets continue to be very low among the socially oppressed communities, including Dalits or scheduled caste population, for downtrodden disadvantages due to the lack of assets translated into hurdles in acquiring education. Given that India has consistently under underinvested in the basic education for the masses, as a result, the history determined inequality in the social sphere get replicated in the labor market, with the better paying jobs going more to privileged groups who have had greater access to higher education. In 2021-22, 38.2% of all SC workers were casual, earning their livelihood mostly out of hard manual labor. The corresponding proportion was 11.2% for workers belonging to the other general category. The caste periodic labor force survey data, the contrast with the East Asian countries including Japan, China is notable. Thereby, the 1950s itself, land reforms and other measures had created a relative egalitarian social structure which formed the basis for the progressive economic and social changes in the later years. The persistence of inequalities was negatively impacted industrial and economic growth in India. Domestic demand has been lopsided, coming as it does largely from the upper income classes who constitute only a small though substantial in absolute numbers segment of the population. This has slowed down the growth of manufacturing of high quality mass consumption goods, including food production and garments entrepreneurship, who has emerged from a narrow social base. Reinstate state support. Looking forward, we need to have a clear recognition of what went wrong and where we got it right with the ambitious development strategy. India launched immediately after independence the audacious attempt to build technological and industrial capabilities to generous state support was to correct things to do. The country must reinstate such efforts if it has to stand a chance in fast-growing economic fields, be it semiconductor or biotechnology. After 1991, India abandoned planning for industrial growth, assuming mistakenly that there is no role for industrial policy in a globalized economy. It will be costly to continue with that error now at a time when both the United States and China are lavishing government support for their industries. At the same time, India must redouble efforts to make economic growth more inclusive and broad-based education, especially higher education, should be accessible to all, including the disadvantaged. India's mission to use technology to propel itself to a higher level of development is half won. Now, if the country's billion-strong masses acquire the social and human capabilities required for upward mobility, that will be the equivalent of a lunar takeoff in economic progress. The next a gold hunt. India is hoping to put up its best swing yet in Asia. Delayed by a year owing to COVID-19 restrictions in China, the 19th Asian Games officially began with Hangzhou on Saturday, first held in Delhi in 1951. The latest Asiad will have nearly 12,500 athletes, a lot more than the 11,000 at the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. Athletes in Hangzhou will be competing in 40 sports including breakdancing and esports which will make their debut in the 16-day event. There are sports too such as Jiangqi and Go which could make many turn in search engines on the internet. In a few sports including hockey, archery, tennis and boxing, the ASIAD will also offer Olympic qualifications sports for Paris 2024. China is a giant topping the medal table at the games every time from 1982 when India hosted it for the second time again in Delhi. At the last ASIAD in Jakarta 2018, China finished on top with 289 medals, including 132 gold, while Japan 205 medals and South Korea 177 took the next two spots. Jakarta was a very fruitful Asiad for India as it finished with a record medal haul of 70 medals, which included 16 gold. Expectations are high this time too, with the Union Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur hoping for 100 medals for Indian Olympic Association President PT Usha, a medal machine herself at these games in the mid 1980s, predicting a best ever Asiad for the country. With adequate government support, better facilities, and many exposure trip abroad, India with more than 650 athletes does not does look strong. Athletes is the big hope once again. For the first time, India will go into the Asiad with an Olympic and world champion in javelin thrower Neeraj Chopra and his battle with Pakistan's world's silver medalist Nadim could be one of the highlights. In Neeraj had made Indians believe that they could conquer the world and this could be The reason for three javelin throwers finishing among the top six at the Budapest World, where the Indian men 400-meter relay team also made history for by finishing fifth and bettering its own Asian record a few weeks ago. Jaswin Aldrin and M. Srishankar were the number 1 and 2 in this year's world's long jump list, while triple jumper Praveen Chitrawal was also on an impressive run. But many of the Indian athletes did not live up to expectation in Budapest and Hangzhou offer a chance for redemption. Hockey, where the Indian men and women's team are the Asia's highest ranked side, offer hopes of bringing gold, while cricket, where India is making its Asian debut. Shooting and badminton are among the sports that have raised hopes of a global golden show. Then tracking India's growth trajectory. Tracking India's growth trajectory. The conventional way to assess a country's economic situation is to look at the quarterly, 3-month, and annual 12-month GDP gross domestic product growth rate and compare it to previous quarter as well as years. In the quarterly release of GDP figures by the NSO National Statistical Office, the country's performance is likened to reviewing a report card of its economic performance. However, a critical difference between reviewing a report card and India's economic figures is that the latter tells a far more nuanced story. The Q1 data covering the GDP growth rate from April to June financial year 24 boasts a nominal growth rate of 8.8% and a real growth rate of 7.8%. The growth story currently posit that the numbers reflect an uptick in the agriculture sector growing at 3.5%, unlikely to be sustained due to pressure from the El Nino phenomena and the services industries, with the financial, real estate and professional services growing at 12.2%. Moreover, there is also talk of sustaining a close to 6.5% growth rate for the current financial year. However, a closer look at the number provides a far more interesting interpretation of the growth. Calculating GDP, the first factor to consider the calculating the GDP growth rate involves many complex statistical choices and sophisticated statistical operation. One such decision the NSO made while conducting their research was to use the income approach of calculating GDP rather than expenditure approach. The income approach involves summing up all national incomes from the factors of production and accounting for others elements such as taxes, depreciation, and not foreign factor income. The assumption generally is that both methods lead to similar results. However, the expenditure approach detects headlines growth to be 4.5% rather than 7.8%, which is larger discrepancy. Moreover, another essential statistical operation is the adjusting the inflation using the price and deflator. Typically, the deflator is meant to adjust growth figures when they are overstated by inflation. In this case, deflation due to falling commodity prices reflected in the wholesale price index has worked to overstate the real growth. Furthermore, there is a base effect from COVID-19 degrowth degrowth period, which it continues to plague India's growth figures, although less pronounced in financial year 24. The base effect has a role in comparative statistics due to sporadic growth in the years following financial year 2021. Additionally, one must consider whether the supposedly pooled inflation rate calculated through the consumer price index can be sustained at current level, with the impending depreciation of the Indian rupee against the dollar due to capital outflow pressure resulting from the RBI's reluctance to raise interest rates. India is a net importer and its most significant import consists of crude petroleum, whose prices seem to be rising due to Saudi $100 per barrel push and rupee depreciation. The domestic consumption of diesel, a proxy for economic activity in India, fell by 3% in August, which if the sustained does not portend a rosy growth picture for coming quarters. Revenue for from taxes, moreover, the government's tax revenue from direct tax has weakened over the previous quarter, while the indirect tax revenue remained strong, indicating a K-shaped pattern. The income streams from progressive taxation, more significant tax burden on those higher on the income ladder, seem to be a laggard compared to its regressive counterpart. A muted growth of direct tax collected in an economy boosted by services industry is a statistical discrepancy which remains unexplained in the proposed GDP growth story. Direct and personal taxes should, in the absence of any significant policy changes, have grown closer to the nominal growth rate than it has currently. Narrowing revenue streams indicate forced austerity measures as the government intends to control the budget deficit and hence in the interest rate. Therefore, growth in financial 24 stemming from government expenditure seems to be a pipe dream. A nuanced approach. In conclusion, after a meticulous analysis of India's Q1 financial 24 economic transcript, it becomes palpable that the report growth narrative might be somewhat over embellished. The divergence in growth figures brought forth by the income and expenditure approach manifest a significant disparity, raising fundamental question about the veracity of prolonged optimistic narrative. Moreover, the underpinning of this growth story, nuanced by inflationary adjustment and conspicuous fluctuations in tax revenue streams, signals a cautious trajectory. Additionally, the apprehensive outlook on the agriculture sector and potential fiscal constraint, the present and arguably more restrained picture than the initially portrayed. Therefore, it seems prudent to assert that India's economic performance, although showing signs of resilience, does not quite emerge as the unequivocal success story depicted in initial observation, urging a more nuanced and critical approach in assessing the trajectory ahead. Anand Srinivasan is a consultant and Saswat Samathan is a researcher assistant in Union Investment Services. Another Khalistani operative gone down in Canada. Lawrence Bishnoi gang has claimed responsibility for killing of Sukhdul Singh, but Indian agency yet to confirm it. A rivalry between two gangs is said to have resulted in the killing. The Lawrence Bishnoi gang has reportedly claimed responsibility for the killing of Sukhdul Singh alias Sukhna Gunek in Winnipeg, Canada on Wednesday. The deceased was wanted by the National Investigation Agency for his links with Khalistan terrorists. The development yet to be confirmed by Indian agency. Come every day, diplomatic row between India and Canada triggered over the murder of Khalistani Tiger Force Chief Hardeep Singh Nijjar by unidentified men on the parking lot of a Gurudwara in Canada. So survey on June 18 on the X. The NIA released Sukha Donkey's photographs along with those of the most wanted criminals and gangsters, many of whom are based in Canada or have contacts in that country. Hours later, a suspected Lawrence Bishnoi gang members posted a short message claiming responsibility for the murder of Sukha Denke, who belonged to the rival Davinder Bambiha group. Preliminary reports suggested that he was at his residence when two persons fired several rounds at him from close range and escaped. The ongoing war between the two gangs has resulted in the killings of several persons on both sides over the past few years. In August last year, the Bambiha gang issued a warning on social media to the now jailed Lawrence Bishnoi and Jagu Bangwanpuria and Kannada-based Goldie Birar, blaming them for the murder of singer Sidhu Moosewala on June 29, 2022. Bishnoi is currently in an Ahmedabad prison. The Bishnoi gang has alleged that Sukha Domkes was involved in the killing in Gurulal Brar, a close relative of Kannada-based gangster Goldie Brar, Vicky Miduk Khera, August 7, 2021, and British Indian Kabdadi player Sandeep Nangal Ambian, March 14, 2024, originally from the Muga in Punjab, Sukha Dunke left for Canada in 2017 on a tourist visa sponsored by his sister after securing a passport allegedly based on forged documents. He had been living there with her and their mother. The state police have registered about 16 cases allegedly involving him and his associates who indulged in extortion and a contract of killing. He was said to be close to another Canada-based lead individual terrorist Arshad Singh Gill Aka Ars Dalla, who, according to the NIA, has been guided and commissioning terrorist act and promoting terror violence and large-scale extortion in India on behalf of KTF. Arshad Dalla also allegedly runs an extortion racket. China, US, and India absent at the United Nations Climate Ambition Summit. The Delhi Climate Ambition Summit in New York as part of the United Nations General Assembly that concluded on a third day was marked by the absence of major economies whose actions significantly influence the future of global emissions. China, the US, and India which collectively account for about 42% of global greenhouse gas emissions and are the top three emitters in that order were all absent from the summit that was designed according to United Nations to showcase leaders who are mover and doers and have credible actions policies and plan to keep the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of Paris Agreement alive and deliver climate justice to those on the front lines of the climate crisis. In the run-up to the summit, nearly 100 heads of the state had written in the response to a call from United Nations Security Secretary General Antonio Guterres to ramp up actions to address the climate crisis. However, only representatives from 34 states and 7 institutions were given the floor on the day of the summit. India's neighbors Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan were among the listed speakers, and emerging economies such as South Africa, Brazil were also on the list. The European Union, Germany, France, and Canada were also on the podium. The criteria of countries to be considered for a speaking slot at the summit were that they would be expected to present updated pre-2030 nationally determined contributions as agreed in Glasgow, updated net zero targets, energy transition plans with the commitments to new coals, oil and gas, fossil fuels phase out plans, and more ambitious renewable energy targets, green climate fund pledges, and economy wide plans on adaptation and resilience. All the main emitters and notably all G20 governments would be asked to commit to presenting by 2025 more ambitious economy wide nationally determined contribution featuring absolute emissions cut and covering all gases. The climate ambition summits this year yet set a high bar for participation. The Secretary General Climate Action Team engaged governments as well as businesses and local authorities to with transition plans to reach net zero in line with the United Nations backed credibility standard and accountability of net zero pledges. Stephen Dujarric, Spokesperson for the United Nations Secretary General told the Hindu in an email he did not clarify if the India had put in a request or even participated in the summit. An official in the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change also declined the Hindus' request for information. India last updated its climate pledges in 2022 of reducing emissions intensity or the volume of emissions per unit of gross domestic product by 40%, 45% from 2005 levels by 2030, and a 10% increase from what it is agreed to in 2015. Climate solution: the government committed to meet 50% of its electric power needs from renewable non-fossil fuel energy sources of from 40% committed at the Paris Agreement. It promised to create an additional carbon sink to 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent through additional forest and tree cover by 2030. Our focus here is on climate solution and our task is urgent. Humanity has opened the gates to hell, Mr. Guterres said in his address. Climate action is drafted by the scale of the challenge. If nothing changes, we are heading towards a 2.8 degree temperature rise, towards a dangerous and unstable world. ISRO hoping to wake up Vikram and Pragya rover today. The Indian Institute of Space Organization is looking to wake up the Chandrayaan 3 Vikram lander and Pragya rover as a drone will break on the moon on Friday. The lander and the rover went to sleep after the end of one lunar day or 14 Earth days on September 2. The Pragya was put in sleep mode. Pragya was put in sleep mode, and on September 4, the space agency put Vikram to in sleep mode with its payloads switched off. Both Vikram and Pragya's receivers, however, have been kept on once the sun sets on the moon after the completion of one lunar day. Temperature could plunge between minus 200 degrees centigrade in the if the ISRO manages to wake up the Vikram and Pragya. It would be a bonus for the space agency as it would be hoping to carry out more experiments on the moon. And Saroja Vaidyanathan, Bharatanatyam dancer, passes away. Bharatanatyam dancer Saroja Vaidyanathan died at her residence here in the early hours of Thursday, just 2 days after she turned 86. She was battling cancer for some time now and passes away around 4 a.m. today morning. Her daughter-in-law and dancer Rama Vaidyanathan said. The classical dancer was given the Padma Shri in 2002 and the Padma Bhushan in 2013. Mr. Saroja Vaidyanathan was known for her extensive contribution to Bharatanatyam and Carnatic music in the form of 10 full-length ballads and nearly 2000 choreographies. Rama remembered her mother-in-law and guru for leaving a 50-year-old legacy behind in the form Ganesha Natyalaya, a classical dance school in the national capital. It is now our duty to take her legacy forward. I remember her for the love and affection she gave all of us. Where I am today is solely because of her. Rama said me the last rites will be performed at the Lodhi crematorium on Friday at 2 p.m. Minister of Culture G. Krishan Reddy took to X to pay condolences on Mrs. Raju Saroja Vaidyanathan's demise. Bharatanatyam dancer and Rajya Sabha member Sonal Man Singh also remembered Mrs. Saroja Vaidyanathan for her immense contribution to the dance world. And purchases of home vehicles have dented having not distress. The Finance Ministry on Thursday dismissed the critical voices about household savings having fallen to a multi-decade low on account of economic distress and asserted that households were now having lesser financial assets than in the past as they had started taking loans to buy real assets such as homes and vehicles. This was not a sign of distress but of confidence in the Account of economic distress asserted that households were now adding lesser financial assets than in the past as they had started taking loans to buy real estate such as homes and vehicles. This was not a sign of distress but of confidence in their future employment and income prospects. The ministry added in a statement on X data released by the Reserve Bank of India in this week showed net household financing savings slid to 5.1% of GDP in 2022-23, recorded to be the lowest since 1976-77 from 7.2% in 2021-22. This coupled with an increase in greenhouse in household financial liabilities to 5.8% from 3.8% of GDP in 2021-22 had prompted concerns that the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic was still incomplete for many households and that high inflation had dented savings, changing preference, asserting that the correct position with a true fact and right inference of data indicated that challenging consumer preferences for different financial products was the real reasons for the decline in household savings. The ministry said in a 630 word statement between June 2020 and March 2023, the stock of household gross financial assets went up by the 37.6% and the stock of household gross final liabilities went up by the 42.6%. No big difference between the two households had added net financial assets of 22.8% 8 lakh crore rupees in financial 21, nearly 70 lakh crore rupees in financial 2022 and 13.88 lakh crore rupees in 23. So they added less financial assets to their portfolio than in the previous years and the year before. They added financial assets by a lesser magnitude than in the previous year because they have now started taking loans to buy real estate such as homes. It is said sharing RBI's data on growth in personal loans. The ministry said there had been a steady double-digit growth in loans for housing since May 2021, indicating that financial liability had been incurred to buy real assets. Double digit growth. Vehicle loans have been growing at double digit since April 2022 and more than 20% since September 2022. The household sector is not in distress. Clearly, they are buying vehicles and homes on mortgages. The ministry avoid overall household savings current pieces which includes financial, physical and jewelry has grown and at a CAGR of 9.2% between 2013 and 14 and 21-22. Nominal GDP has grown at a CAGR of 9.65% during the same period. The ministry highlighted this showed that the ratio of household saving to nominal GDP had remained constant around 20% to 19% end of age of 21-22. Then large firms get debt issuance flexibility. The Security Exchange Board of India SEBI on Thursday approved providing flexibility in the framework for large corporates for meeting their incremental financing needs from the debt market through issuance a debt of debt security. A higher monetary threshold has been specified for defining LCs, thereby reducing the number of entities qualifying as LCs. Regulators board has also approved the removal of a penalty of LCs which are not able to raise a certain percentage of incremental borrowing from the debt market with the view to facilitate a case of compliance and ease of doing business. SEBI also decided to retain the requirement that compliance with the framework will be met over a contiguous block of 3 years. The requirement of filling a statement identifying itself as an LC has also been dispensed with. TRI outlines a broadcast policy. Details of national broadcasting policy emerged on Thursday as the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India TRI consulted stakeholders on the shape such a policy should intake. The policy may provide a common approach for license oversight and compliance, as RAI said in its paper, indicating that the government is seeking to bring further parity in how digital legacy mediums like television and OTT streaming are regulated. The broad contours of the proposed policy include promoting content production in India that promotes Indian culture, expanding institutional capacity, promoting research, and adopting a coherent and a modernity approach towards a legacy mediums like print, ratio, and divisions, as well as digital media. तो आप लोग देख लीजिएगा. So this is all for today, and thank you. We'll meet from tomorrow onwards. Thank you. Thanks a lot.